Okay, so we're going to get started. Everyone, feel free to use the chat during this conversation. Welcome to our last Partner Summit series of the calendar year. We're super excited to have you. This is a space where we bring together some of our partners to talk about topics that are going to be of interest both to the corporate community as well as to our student teams and faculty. They're all relevant to the sustainable business mindset that we all work to develop here. So let's go ahead and welcome our panelists. If we can go to the next slide. So I guess first I should introduce myself. That was the one screen that we skipped. I'm Spia Schoenberg. I am the president of Enactus US. I just joined a couple of months ago, and my role is to lead the programming that we deliver across the US that's on college campuses, like on all corners of the country. So hopefully some of our students in those programs will be watching this. What we do with this content is typically slice and dice it up and deliver it back out to our teams and our communities at the relevant time in their curriculum. So we're super excited to hear from experts in this space on eco-business. So I first I'm going to introduce each of the panelists and then turn it over to each of you for like a quick lightning round introduction. So the first is the CEO of Happy Dirt, Sandi, if you want to say a few words.
Sure. Thank you. I'm happy to be here and speak with you all today. And I'm based in Durham, North Carolina. We launched a wholesale distribution infrastructure for organic farmers back in 2004, rebranded since then, but our first name was Eco. So I'm excited to be on an eco business panel. And yeah, I actually own the company with a bunch of the farmers that we serve. So it's set up to be very inclusive to our constituency.
Wonderful. Super excited to hear your perspective, Sandi. Thank you. And next up is Ryan from SpringBack Mattress Recycling. And cool fun fact about this business is that it was launched through one of our programs in an Enactus campus many years ago. So Ryan, hand it to you.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Ryan Tiano, COO, SpringBack Mattress Recycling. We're in Nashville, Tennessee, and we've been recycling mattresses for just a hair over 10 years now. Our goal really is to do something positive, of course, positive for the environment, and help our local community in the process by way of employing special needs men and women from the streets of our community, people with mental health disorders or substance abuse issues. That way we can really kind of help everyone involved. So hopefully I'll have something to offer today.
You definitely will, Ryan. Thank you so much. And next up, next slide, is Rana. And Rana, if you can tell us a little bit about your background, it's more than Amazon. So I'll hand it off to you to give yourself an intro.
Hi there. I am Rana Marks Doan. I just changed my name, so still getting used to that. I'm currently a senior program manager at Amazon, and I focus on within our sustainability team on communications, branding, and reporting for sustainability. In the first half of my career, I worked within social enterprise, really kind of similar to what Ryan's talking about, creating job opportunities for people who otherwise didn't have access like everybody else. So mostly focused on job opportunities for people who are blind and visually impaired. And then transitioned to corporate sustainability. I've spent some time at Johnson & Johnson. I'm now at Amazon. So kind of across the continuum of different types of organizations focused on impact.
Amazing. And again, we apologize. We realized we put a different bio here for you. I wanted to just point out that it says Amazon, but JJ, and you have other perspectives outside of Amazon, which we're going to hear from today. So excited to hear from the three panelists. And back to kind of our purpose of bringing everyone together. Part of this is to kind of explore the different perspectives around sustainable business practices, and kind of what the trends are and what the future holds for that, for our competitions, for our projects, etc. So let's just start by kind of defining the terms, because we're talking about eco businesses, right? What does that mean? First of all, it means something different for our students. It means something different for each one of us. But I thought we would do kind of a quick round and hear a little bit more this community, like who you are, because each of you really have different roles, and what eco business and what sustainable practices and what ESG means. You can really pick a term. It's a really open field. I want to make this question as open as possible, like what that means to you. And why don't we start with Sandi, since you did the intro first. Tell us like what your kind of position in the ecosystem is and what eco business and sustainable practices means to you.
Sure. I mean, our position has certainly changed over the years since we've been in business. But I would just say that, I always think it's really important for everybody to be on the same page, that sustainability as a term represents, everyone discusses it as the three-legged stool, right? So there's one leg of that stool that's environmental. And that's wholly where I would say that an eco business operates within, just focusing on that environmental impact. And the other two legs are social sustainability, which all three of us are very focused on as well. And I think, that's a whole part of the stool, is that the stool collapses if you're not integrating all three. And the third is financial sustainability. So for me, eco business is really, not just how are we doing less harm or no harm, but there's also kind of, at this point where we are on the planet, we need to be cleaning up. So how are we, leaving the planet a better place than how we found it, or leaving our business and our industry a better situation than how we found it? When we started the company in 2004, the farm to table phrase didn't really exist at that point. So I would say I got really lucky. There was no competition, frankly. And also we really, now there's a term called food hub, which is definitely, out there. The government has a definition for it, but that term also didn't exist. So what we did was we launched a company that would ideally help make it easier for farmers to keep farming and attract them to organic vegetable production as like a vital force for where rural economies and their families and their livelihoods could see a future in farming, where they wanted to encourage their next generation to come back to the farm and build a profitable and healthy career with it. And at this point, fabulously, we have a lot of competition now, which is great. And so I would say that how we fit into the ecosystem, it needs to keep changing, because, the world around us continues to change globally and environmentally, but also even, locally and regionally in terms of our partnerships with customers and vendors. And so what that looks like for us is constantly figuring out how to be the best platform, like how to offer all of the best amenities, be the best advocate for our vendors, the best educator to our customers, and, obviously quality and customer service and all of that stuff. And I would say also, as far as an ecosystem, a big part of this is how we take care of our employees as well. So when I first launched the company, I was fresh out of undergrad and I drove the truck for the first year. And I thought, it's so exciting to me that I'm building something where I'm going to be able to hire somebody who studied environmental studies like I did and is really passionate about making a difference in the world. And it didn't feel like there were a lot of jobs for us back then. We had to kind of go and pitch the concept. There really weren't there was no sustainability director positions anywhere at the time. And within a few years, our business really grew, and my focus really shifted, and I was even more enthusiastic about the idea of being able to employ people who didn't know anything about composting, but they would learn because they were working here, or didn't know anything about the difference, between eating a fresh tomato versus a tomato that's been shipped in from thousands of miles away, or didn't know anything about what the word organic meant, or maybe had a negative impression of it. And so that to me is really exciting, as well as kind of like bringing more people into this awareness, and that it's really all of these values and virtues are, it's horrible when they're exclusive. And leave people out. And so the most important thing is that we're bringing more people into empowerment and awareness and appreciation, and feeling like their wellness matters.
I love that. Thank you. That was super helpful. And yeah, thanks for taking the slides down. And by the way, if people can't hear me, can you guys like post in the comments? Because I feel like just make sure everybody can hear everybody. Because Ryan, you have a totally different perspective, and keep in mind that ESG stands for environmental perspective on how.
Hi, so I think you were saying my name, but you were breaking up quite a bit. So, okay. So again, Ryan Tiano, and I didn't hear the full question, so I just kind of run with what I think we're talking about here. So our business here, as you mentioned, the idea was formulated from Enact as partners with Belmont University here in Nashville, and they had the idea of recycling the materials out of mattresses. I guess I should back up and say my thoughts on eco-friendly or ESG is a simple principle that I try to live my life by, and that's you can't keep what you have without giving it away, right? That's financial, that's any economical circumstances, that's spiritual, that's health, that's social, environment, all of the above. For me to grow as a person, as a human, as a business operations guy, I've got to be giving of myself. So I think that is a principle that can be easily adopted by all legislations and governments and organizations and policymakers and big corporations around the world. The thing about that for me is, if those who have the most, and not just money, right? But if those that have the most will give a little bit to those that have the least, whether it's give a little bit of money or a little bit of time or a little bit of love or a little bit of hope, then the people with the most really, in my opinion, stand to gain the most. So that's what the sustainable business is for me at the heart. It's about the people. It just so happens that we're breaking down mattresses for the environment. We do so by way of employees who really are, you could say down on their luck. I like to use we hear that phrase NIMBY thrown out a lot. People want to address homelessness, but they don't want to, somebody else do it, or, somebody else clean up the trash, or somebody else make our city look good. Well, we kind of do a lot of the dirty hands-on stuff that nobody else wants to do, but everybody wants a solution for. So Enact has created the idea of recycling the materials that make up a mattress. That was brought to us in 2012. And we kind of took it and ran with it. And we had no idea what we were doing at the time, but we realized that not only can you take the metal springs of a mattress and resell it to mattress refurbishers or recyclers, metal recyclers, but the foam and the outer cover, there's a lot of cotton, there's cloth, there's nylon, polyester, there's all kinds of materials in there, and it's all reusable under the right circumstances. So it's taken us several years to really figure out how to do what we are doing today and refine our process, so we can barely be profitable. I should say that we are fully self-supported nonprofit organization, which I think is incredible. We're not asking for money every year, but we're supporting ourselves, and in turn, we're supporting the people that work for our organization. These are guys that come to us with the willingness to do what it takes to change. They come to us, they're homeless in most cases. We see these guys put in the work. They grow in hope, they grow in spirit, they grow in economical term. I mean, they get into their own apartments. In some cases, they buy their own houses. They redevelop relationships with their children. So the ongoing long-term effect of this, of every man that we can help, just has generational change for the future. And it's the same thing for the mattresses. At almost 400,000 mattresses to date, we calculate that at a little over 140 million pounds of waste that's been kept out of our landfills. The funny thing is, if we could get more government and corporations on board with our programs, you need a math major or, one of you smart folks out there to put a number to that, to really show these people what the long-term benefits of this is financially. And it's unfortunate, but I think it's going to be the financial terms that are going to bring people around to helping us obtain our goals here, which is changing lives.
Thank you so much, Ryan. So we've actually lost Via, and I'm going to step in for a few minutes till she gets her tech figured out. So we're going to move on, and I'm so sorry. I'm not sure which panelist has not spoken on this topic. I feel like it might be Raina or Sandi.
Yep, that's me. I can
Perfect.
jump in here.
Yeah, so we'd just love to hear, how your business communicates impact and what, as customers and consumers are looking at the ESGs, what you guys are doing about that.
Absolutely. Well, I think something that's really interesting that you're seeing on the panel today is a few examples of just the very wide spectrum of business models that are working to drive positive social and environmental impact. And on one end of the spectrum, you have business models that are kind of first and foremost focused on a social or environmental issue or challenge. And then on the other end of the spectrum, where I'm sitting right now, is within a traditional business, how business is really taking environmental and social factors into consideration, and not only addressing them through philanthropic ventures, but embedding into the way that we do business every day, into our operations, sustainability, both social and environmental sustainability. So I think it's a really neat array that we're seeing just on this panel of kind of that spectrum. But another thing I would say that has kind of been emerging in the more traditional corporate space, in addition to really shifting business operations to reflect social and environmental challenges, is how we develop and think about innovating for the demands and interests that our customers have for products or services that are more socially and environmentally responsible, or actually help other businesses drive their own sustainability objectives. So I think that's something that you're seeing kind of across the traditional business sector now, is sustainability as an opportunity for businesses to really innovate. The other thing that is happening that is really a critical shift is making this the norm and using regulation to really push that. So all over the world, we're seeing right now a move to bring ESG, so that's environmental, social, governance, regulation to the forefront, the same way that we have financial regulation of companies. So in order to operate, companies have to uphold certain financial disclosures and behavior to operate in different parts of the world. And we're in this really interesting moment where we're seeing that same type of regulation come forth for ESG issues. And not that regulation is usually what we look to kind of, move the world, but it is going to, I think, be a really critical shift for the business sector and bringing sustainability to the forefront and making it the norm for all companies, not just for companies who are, who have been thinking about these issues for a long time, but for companies that who have not, and also for companies that may be inherently operating in spaces that have environmental and social negative impacts. So I think it's a really interesting moment in our society, and I have a lot of optimism about how business is going to be a force for positive environmental and social impact going forward.
Hi guys, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. I'm wondering, has someone else picked up with the questions?
Yep. So yeah, I've got it. So we're
I'll be
just
quiet.
moving into our next question here. And that's specifically around, how does your corporate structure drive impact? What are you doing? Are you a B Corp? Are you an ESOP? And for those of you that don't know, that's an employee stock ownership plan. Are you a nonprofit? So what does your corporate structure do to drive those ESGs forward? And, I think we're going to kick it over to Sandi.
Okay, great question. And I've just loved hearing everything that Ryan and Rana just had to say. That was great. So we're an LLC. I own a percentage of the company, and then we have a pool of farmers that own the remaining balance. We've just started to bring in some other staff members into the ownership pool. It's something that we talk about all the time. Like from day one, we got a seed fund of $48,000 in 2004 from the North Carolina State Legislature to launch. And I was always, from the very beginning, really paranoid about needing to spend a lot of energy schmoozing at conferences to get more grant funding. So from day one, it was really important to me to be able to stand on our own 2 feet financially. And also, the idea of trends in philanthropic giving felt like also a pressure. Like I knew we could make local and organic food and supporting farmers trendy, or we could be part of that trend. But there's so many things to give to. So farmer ownership was really key for me to be able to know that we were going to sustain the company in our core values of wanting to support farmers. Of course, the farmers were like, heck no, we don't want to own this thing. We want you to own it because we need you to wake up in the middle of the night worrying about whether we paid the insurance bill or whatever. We wake up with our own problems. And so listening to farmers, obviously they're not our customers, but we see them as another tier of customer for us. Listening to them and the pressures that they experience, and frankly, bringing in not just the financial pressures, which there are many, and the physical and environmental pressures, which there are many, but really trying to, I used to joke, we didn't have titles for the first few years. And one of our biggest customers, actually a partner at Amazon, Whole Foods, have been one of our biggest supporters from day one. One of their head buyers was like, Sandi, you all need to grow up, and we need titles so that it's obvious to the public who's in charge. So I was like, I think my title should be Chief Farmer Harasser, because I felt like I was constantly nudging the farmers to talk about what's going on for them personally, to the extent that they're comfortable with it. Like that was going to be an important motivator for us as well, was, the emotional pressures. I mean, farming is one of the most dangerous careers in this country, like literally top 3. Also, we are, for many reasons, not recruiting the next generation of farmers, which is a huge concern in terms of food security, land use planning. It's pretty much impossible to take a parking lot or a shopping mall or a housing development and turn it back into farmland. So, the idea of losing farmland to any kind of development is like a done deal forever. So figuring out how to stabilize the land that is in agriculture and maintain it in agriculture means we have to do it not by causing farmers more hardship. We have to do it with positivity and with love and with all of the benefits and prestige that any hard worker deserves that's doing a service in society. I'm totally rambling at this point, but our ownership model is like completely critical, I think, to our success, and our secret sauce is that with farmers as part owners in the company, it's really critical to be able to, we have some farmers on our board, and so there's constantly advocacy and the ability for them to weigh in. And again, oftentimes they're like, we trust you, do whatever you think, but getting their input on how to better attract more farmers, or how to better support them in terms of the technical assistance or access to, crisis relief things is really important. So.
I can jump in here unless you wanted to hand it off to someone in particular. I think something that's really interesting that Sandi raised is about customers. For all of these types of businesses that we represent here today, if we don't have customers, then we don't exist. And so I think taking that customer-centric mindset and really thinking about where all of our businesses are going, to support what customers are demanding and interested in is just such a critical part of existing in the future. And we're seeing that shift for sure. We've seen it, this is not new, but we're seeing kind of a continuing growth in the interest from customers around more sustainable products, services that help customers, whether those are business customers or customers like you and I and the products that we buy every day, live our values. So I think that customer piece is really interesting. For a public company, there's also the investor shareholder piece. You could think of that as another big customer segment. And that's where we're seeing a lot of interesting activity in investors and shareholders really driving businesses to be thinking about environmental, social, and governance issues every day in every part of their business. So I think, the business model is certainly important, and it's going to drive a different type of way that businesses are thinking about ESG issues. But I think the interesting thing is that any type of business model, whether that's a nonprofit that exists solely to have positive social and environmental value, or if it is a more traditional public company, I think the neat moment about where we're at is that you can use different business models, or you have the ability to incorporate ESG issues across these different business models and see them play out in different ways. And I think the difference between a nonprofit that may be really focused on driving that value for people and planet first and foremost, they may just have a different set of constituents and a different ability to have impact at scale than some of the companies that are kind of the bread and butter of our society. So it's really important, I think, to enable and empower kind of every type of organization in our society to be thinking about these issues and to be part of the solution.
Yeah, and I think what Sandi mentioned about having so many farmers involved on the same plane and for the same purpose is important for any cause, whether it's land and farm grown or recycling efforts or social needs. I'm the complete opposite of that, Sandi. I'm on an island, so I can appreciate where you're at. So we're a nonprofit organization, so there's a very small board of directors. It's myself and two other gentlemen. It's very small. As the operations guy, the end of the day, the dollars and cents and the paying the rent and making sure our accounts receivable and accounts payable match up, so the checks that we send to our guys at the end of the week will clear. It's my job to make sure that happens. The other board members, honestly, sometimes I have to step back and laugh, because at the end of the day, our mission and our purpose is to help men or to help people. I keep saying men, we're open to women. We don't have any women doing what we're doing. But at the end of the day, our main purpose and goal is to lift up and provide hope and love to these men that are on the ground doing the work. So it's almost as if we fail financially, it's okay as long as we've changed lives in the process. Now that's tough for me because I am the operations. I'm on the ground every day, and so kind of to the direction, we're in the Southeast. In the Southeast United States, culture is quite different than it is out West or even in the Northeast. Recycling's not really that big of a thing here. Constituents, it's just not that big of a thing right now. It's trending in that direction ever so slowly. But as of right now, it's just not a big deal. So the only thing that I know how to do with my knowledge and skill set is to slowly try to get the word out, let people know first, from a residential perspective, that this is available if you so choose. And second, from a business or corporation perspective, this is available if you so choose, let's have a conversation so we can see, if this will really save your corporation money today and or long term, and what those financials look like up front and in long term. So I think Sandi mentioned regulation. It's not a regulated thing. People throw away tens of thousands of mattresses every year just in Tennessee. Actually hundreds of thousands in the state of Tennessee, because we already recycle tens of thousands. And it's probably not going to change until one of two things happens. Either more people raise their voices, which then will get regulation involved, or more companies, corporations, and we do business with a lot of big name brand mattress companies that you all have heard of. They use our services as an inline destination. The unfortunate truth is I think they only use our services because it's cheaper for them. I don't really think that they care so much that it's an environmentally sound practice. It's just cheaper for them. But that's fine, right? So I'll probably start talking in circles on this particular subject if I keep going on. So I'll hush it there.
That was awesome, Ryan. I think I'm back. I hope you guys can hear me. I want to take what you just said. So our premise is that environmental, social governance principles, like good governance, good practices, are more important to consumers than they ever were before. You're giving the flip side. Yeah, not really. It's all about the bottom line. If it's cheaper to do it one way, they'll do it that way. If it's cheaper to do it the other way, that maybe they don't have a preference. So I guess I'd want to hear from Sandi and Rana, like, what do you guys see in terms of customer or consumer preferences? And are they willing to vote with their dollars? Like, if it costs more, will they do it? Or will they say, no, I want to save the money? So how does money, play into kind of ESG preferences? And what are you guys seeing? I'll let you two figure out who goes first on that one, because I want to hear both of you.
Rana, why don't you go first just to mix it up?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's the reality that a lot of consumers are still driven by price. And I don't think that's something that, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Not everybody has the same disposable income to be able to make choices that might be more costly, but have a societal or environmental benefit that matters to them. But you do see a subset of consumers, we call them dark green consumers typically, who kind of vote with their dollar every day, every purchase, and they're a tail. And then I think you see similarly a tail on the other end of consumers who really don't care and who are strictly cost driven. But somewhere in the middle are people who are balancing all these factors all the time. They don't want to buy products that make them feel bad about either the people who were impacted in the creation of those products, or in the, how those products impact the planet. And so I think it really does put the responsibility on companies to be thinking about how do we mitigate environmental and social negative impacts, while also thinking about how can we more creatively drive positive impact without having the cost be passed on to the consumer. And I think that it's a challenge. It's a challenge for every company. And you can't rely on every customer being willing to spend more money to buy a product that aligns with their values. But I think that type of challenge is what spurs innovation. And, the kind of best case scenario, Ryan mentioned this, is when these things are not at odds. And sometimes there are systemic kind of pieces in place that don't necessarily reflect the true cost of something. So in the case of recycling mattresses, if the alternative is just putting those mattresses into the landfill, we're not necessarily internalizing the cost as a society in a financial way of what it is to put products into landfill, because landfill is typically a low cost. It's not land that we're thinking of for other uses. But if you kind of flip that and you think about, these are materials that could be repurposed, which would save us from having to buy new materials and source those new inputs to create a new product, then you start to get into really interesting territory. And I think that is the interesting piece of what we're calling circular economy, which is the idea of nothing going to landfill. Everything that we produce kind of keeps going through a life cycle, and maybe a different life cycle. Maybe something that is originally sourced for a mattress ends up being a t-shirt, which ends up being repurposed into a table, and it's really interesting to see how these materials flex across different product types. So I don't even remember where the question started here, but I think looking for those opportunities to not have it always be a trade-off between cost and environmental or social benefit is really where kind of that sweet spot of the future is. And I think it's going to drive and spur innovation and have us thinking about the inputs and outputs in our society in different ways. We're just going to have to get more creative and innovative and think about systems as a kind of continuous cycle rather than having a start and end of life.
I'll just jump in that you just touched on so many great things. We absolutely are in a movement and an industry, our little cottage, organic food distribution boutique industry, where we are counting on people to pay more. Absolutely. And yet it really is quite frustrating to me because like Rana just said, like we are not, and no one's really experiencing the true cost of all of the harm, absolutely within the mattress industry. So the fact that I'm a huge believer in policy for this very reason. I think that a key part of our business, because we're so focused on mission, is that consumer trust. Like when people call Ryan, they trust that he's actually recycling the mattresses and that they're actually supporting their staff, that they're, paying some kind of fair wage and all of that stuff, that they're, it's not just the marketing. And I think that, when people walk into a Whole Foods market, they trust that there's like some vetting process into the products that are on those shelves. When I, maybe buy from any kind of environmental or social business, I have a trust process, and it kind of makes my job easier then because I can be a little bit less, discerning about the products because I assume that it's, so there is a strong vulnerability there. But at the same time, I do believe that if we didn't externalize and bury some of these harmful costs, that we would be that much more competitive. But ultimately, we are a certified B Corporation. We're certified living wage employer. We're certified organic. We have all these food safety certs to go through. I think we're certified fair food project. Like we're very into the third party audits because it is really important for us to not just be able to like put the stamp on, on our products, but frankly, it's a really healthy process. It's like going to the gym. It's like this ongoing, meditation practice where we're constantly thinking like, oh, we should do this. Oh, this might benefit us for, our actual goals that we're trying to accomplish as well. And the work that we do is, there is a trade-off, of course, there's expenses that you take on because you're committed to some of these values. And of course, there's always like a passing on of those costs to the customer. But, we have a hard stop. Like we have to sell within the industry. We have to compete with Mexican and California organic mega farms. So at the end of the day, how do we take a slimmer margin, frankly, so that we could still sell the stuff, but make sure that we're not greenwashing and, taking advantage of that level of consumer trust. And so for us, these audit programs are really helpful to be constantly trying to like chase the, kind of the moving goalposts, because we want to be continually doing better. We don't want to just like maintain some, plateau of feeling proud of ourselves and happy for the work that we were doing. We want to continue to push ourselves and push that envelope. And it's, I would say, really hard probably for all three of us and, all the work that we're all doing, because, I believe so strongly in like the multiplier effect that there's a social benefit happening for the farms. There's a social benefit happening for their farm workers. There's a health and toxicity benefit happening for them. They're also for the consumers and people eating the product and for our employees. And, there's such a you pull the thread and suddenly like the whole thing unravels. Figuring out how to package that story into something that an average consumer, wants to actually digest, I think is really complicated. And at the end of the day, we are all in a convenience industry. Like if you're not focused on convenience in today's economy, then you don't really have a business, no matter what you're doing. So that's a big challenge I would say that we deal with, is how do we conveniently empower our customer and the public to be able to understand just how much their extra, 30 cents for the bunch of collards or kale, or the extra, 10 cents a pound for the sweet potatoes because they're organic and from a certified fair food farm, literally like we couldn't do this without the customer. And so we want them to pat themselves on the back. Like we want our, some of our big buyers to be able to constantly tell this story and wear it as a badge of honor. Like this farm would not still be farming if it wasn't for the commitment I've made to them over the last 5 years and their business. But ultimately, behind every buyer is a human or two that we have a great relationship with. And so figuring out how for them to brag to their bosses and their constituents that they really are having that impact, because it's not baloney, it's really authentic. So that's kind of a challenge that we deal with a lot.
This is awesome. I loved hearing all of that. And please feel free to continue chatting. Tona, that made me smile. Let's ask one final question about kind of the future. All of you mentioned in one way or another the fact that a lot of costs nobody's paying for right now. They're just kind of building up, whether that's a human cost of underpaying workers and them having poor health, whether that's an environmental cost of damage that we're doing to our soil, our planet, et cetera. For businesses that don't prioritize E or S or G or any of these factors, they can use that little fact to their advantage, and nobody's paying for those things right now, right? So Sandi, I think you mentioned, you're a big fan of policy, and so am I. So like, how do you play in this space and how do you win? And what does the future hold for ESG and for kind of sustainable practices when we haven't yet gotten to the point where policy requires that we actually account for those costs and we actually pay for the damages, we actually pay for the things, that we're doing. What's the trend? What do you guys predict that the future holds for this whole space in terms of like policy and sort of a more holistic view of our business practices and our actions and our activities on this planet? I'll just hand it to Ryan first, because you spoke 3 speakers ago. So let's go to you first, and then we can do a lightning round so that we can wrap up before the end of the hour. So like 2 minutes or less kind of thing.
Yeah, it's my turn.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Listen, I don't know what policy is going to be. I think the good news is, and I hope no one takes this the wrong way, but I think the good news is that I believe our population is getting younger. I believe that growth is driving change for obvious reasons. And I believe that we are slowly moving in that direction. Like recycling is trending. Organic is trending. Exercise is trending. Look, when I was a kid, it was just say no, right? It was everywhere you went. It was just say no. They buried it in our brains. Just say no, or don't smoke, or don't do drugs, right? Like, I don't know why it's so hard for our federal government and local governments to start burying that in the children's brains today. The idea of organic and environment and green and friendly and recycling. It's not from a federal or state government place of power. It doesn't seem like it would be that difficult. But again, it comes back to us, the voters, that we haven't made our voice known loud enough. So I think we're moving in that direction. When we get there, I don't know. I mean, I can do more. All of you can do more, but we're probably doing a lot more than most. We're definitely the minority. I don't have the answers.
Yep, I agree. Rana, do you want to go next?
Sure. I was jotting down notes of what I think are kind of the key trends here. I think the first one is that it's going to take time and it's not going to be linear. And I think all of the issues that we all care about feel extremely pressing, and they are, whether that's climate or gender equity or homelessness. And the reality is that it's going to take time to address these issues, and it's not going to be a linear journey. And I think we all need to get comfortable with that. I think that also means that it takes everyone. So policy is absolutely part of it's an ingredient, it's part of the recipe. But we need consumers to vote with their dollars. We need policy to help raise the bar and set expectations. We need academia to educate the leaders of tomorrow. So I think it really compels all of us to figure out where we plug in and use our talents and perspective and kind of the place where it's going to have the most value. And we really need to be like every sector of society, every person needs to be thinking about this kind of in their corner. And it doesn't mean that everybody needs to go quit their jobs and join a nonprofit, but thinking about how do I bring this into what I do and where I kind of exist in society. So not linear, going to take time, takes everyone. And then I think really, if I predict, I think the electric vehicle market is a really good example of this, where at some point, this is a huge shift that we're seeing from combustion vehicles to electric vehicles. But at some point, electric vehicles are just going to be better. They're going to be faster. They're going to be cooler. They're going to be more desired. They're going to be more affordable. They're going to mean you don't have to go fill up your gas tank. There's going to be myriad benefits that make it kind of the obvious decision. But getting from combustion infrastructure to electric infrastructure does not happen overnight. And so I think that's a good example of kind of, where this is going. You need everybody to participate in moving away from harmful ways of doing business and ways of running society. It's going to take time to get there, and it's going to take a lot of moving parts and pieces, and we have to be patient and we have to figure out where we plug in.
Thank you. And last but not least, Sandi.
Yeah, I think, I honestly think there's a whole host of policy that could be implemented pretty easily and quickly, like an extreme tax on dumping mattresses and some kind of public, incentive around recycling. Like, duh, this should be in every single town, every single county. Let's go. So I'm like really ready to work with you on that, Ryan. Like, I hope you are interested in talking about expanding to North Carolina. But I would say that, things like health insurance for farmers. Hello, they provide an important service to society, and there's no good health insurance program to serve farmers. Mandating more vegetables that are eaten by people in hospitals or government settings. There's 50% of the meals we eat in America are cooked by somebody else, whether that's at a fast food restaurant or a fancy restaurant, or the to-go hot bar at the grocery store, or the hospital cafeteria, or the college cafeteria. So figuring out how to make it more baseline that those purchases have values behind them. It's not impossible. Like, we have infrastructure now that distributes locally grown, organic, et cetera. If it was more expensive to be using pesticides, if it was more expensive to be paying for the cost of the health outcomes of using pesticides, it is so much harder and more expensive to be a certified organic farm than it is to be a pesticide-based farm, like a synthetic pesticide-based farm. That's ridiculous. Like, that's just basic. We should be doing a lot to support Black and brown and indigenous farmers. I'm in an industry that's literally based on a history of slavery. And so we need reparations within our food system, period, end of story. Every, human being who's open to getting anti-racism training should have free access to it and, paid leave for it. So I just think there's like some baseline, like, I would like to just see some basic policy happen, because then there's a cultural process of embracing it. Like, the infrastructure is not just the, gassing up or fueling up or plugging your car in. The infrastructure is like in all of us as humans, as generations, to be able to like take some of these things on and, acclimate towards the emotional and personal growth and vulnerability that can happen when we have policy that exposes us to things beyond the like sheltered environment that we're in. So, we need to start soon, because people are getting harmed every day along the way. So that's one thing I would say. But ultimately, I think also this just kind of ignites the power of sustainable businesses, because there's such a powerful network of businesses that are open to working together, of different entrepreneurs. Like it is really inspiring how much leadership and fellowship options and support, whether it's through foundations or through government programs, nonprofits that are supporting people who are trying to do something different. Whether it's start a new nonprofit, start a new business, get back into farming. This kind of reminds me of how while we wait or push or both for policy, there's so much that we can do just as individuals, and being able to network together and kind of amplify each other's causes and help make connections. I think that's ultimately being a part of a network and making sure that we pull people into the network who don't have as easy access to connections is so critical and so impactful. So that's where I would say it's also really exciting to be part of this movement within the environmental and sustainability industry, because we all care so much. Like, we are not single issue people. We care about humanity, and so we want to be. I know that it hurts me to think of all of the mattresses that are thrown away, and so I don't know what the opposite of NIMBY is. The other term might be, but we kind of need that term. We need that flag to wave, is we care about all these things together, and we need to be able to crash mob into one movement or another to be able to get some change to happen. But in the meanwhile, we don't want to lose out on any opportunities for strong, amazing nonprofits or businesses or or even public sector movements to be able to succeed. So sorry, that was kind of a ramble.
No, that was really a great way to wrap. And that's kind of why we're all here. So whether we're watching this in real time or later on, we see the names on the screen. We're going to be sharing all this on social. This is a great way to connect with each other. And for young people who are just starting out in their career, what I'm hearing from this group is that there's a lot of different pathways in. There's a lot of different approaches. All sorts of perspectives are going to be valued here. Because wherever you come from, you have something to contribute, you've experienced something, and you're going to have a take on how to solve a problem. And mattresses is a great example because it's just one problem. It's sort of small, sort of big, right? And there's probably thousands of other problems like it that can sustain entire companies, entire businesses, entire families are supported by their income from recycling mattresses, which is such a small thing, but it's so meaningful and impactful, when it's you that it's impacting. So I just want to thank all of you for sharing your thoughts, and everybody for attending. And I want to pass it over to Marty to thank our sponsors, because this wouldn't be possible without them. So Marty.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Both Regis and Rich Products are our sponsors for the 2022 Partner Summit Series. Neither one of the corporations were able to join us today, but I want to thank them on Enactus's behalf, and thank all of you for joining as well. Both Regis and Riches, ironically started partnerships back with Enactus in 1999, so they're both 23-year partners. They very much support and hold in the highest regard Enactus's values of integrity, passion, innovation, and collaboration. And I think you all know their brands. Regis Corporation is the hairstylist place, clearly the folks that I do not use, but they're Super Cuts and Smart Styles in the Walmarts. And then Regis products, if you're in the frozen food section of your local grocer, they include things like CPAC and hang on, I just lost it, and Farm Rich. So again, I want to thank both Regis and Rich's products for their continued sponsorship and partnership. I also would like to mention, I think our next slide is just a heads up, and you're all invited. Everybody that's on this call is invited. Our U.S. National Expo is going to be April 19th through the 21st. It's going to be held on the campus of the University of Texas at Dallas. Registration details are coming soon, but you can see to save the date, please pencil those in. This will be our first full live event since the pandemic had begun. Earlier this year, we did kind of a virtual early competition and then the main competition live, but this will be our first full event here in the US, and it's April 19th through the 21st, again, at the University of Texas, Dallas, and everybody is invited. So thank you again for joining us today.